Duran was a technical master at close-range fighting, with many of his hardest punches in any given match traveling only inches to their target. Although much is made of Duran's infighting, he was a highly skilled boxer on the outside as well. In fact, it was his ability to effortlessly manipulate distance that made him such a formidable fighter. Duran's strategy was to tie up his opponents and brutalize them from the inside to wear down their defenses. Duran would punch his way into close range, utilizing unpredictable jabs, feints, and head movement. Instead of snapping his punches back to his guard, Duran would circle his hands over and under his opponent's guard and into a hold. He was essentially combining his striking and grappling into one movement. Duran was most successful with his shifting 1-2, widening his cross around his opponent and then inside their lead arm. Another staple entering combination was the jab uppercut, allowing Duran to take an inside position right away. Either of these combinations could be followed with the lead hook that would control his competitor's opposite hand. Duran would employ these same techniques defensively, ducking in and circling his hands inside. Once Duran had control of his opponent's arms, he had control of the fight. Duran usually dedicated one hand to striking and one hand to grappling, and would switch between the two whenever it gave him an advantage to do so. The grappling hand was essential to Duran's strategy. He consistently disturbed his opponent's balance with overhooks, underhooks, and collar ties, taking away their base of support and limiting their power. Duran's constant wrestling and barrage of inside punches would exhaust his competitors. At the same time he was manipulating their balance, Duran was using his other hand to find an inside angle from which to attack. This was very similar to the hand fighting that wrestlers engage in to get a superior position, except used to set up strikes instead of throws. A modified elbow tie was now ideal for tight hook punches, while an inside position lent itself well to uppercuts. Duran was obsessed with taking the tightest possible angle of attack, always keeping his arms as close as possible to his ribs. This not only allowed him to consistently beat his opponent to the punch, but left them less openings to attack as well. Duran was able to use the feel of his opponent's arms against his own to interpret their intent, and defend against their movements almost simultaneously. When he felt a punch coming, he could stiff arm his opponent, or stop the punch short by pushing against their arm. When he felt an absence of touch, he knew his opponent was loading up, and he would duck, weave, or roll away from the oncoming blows. As his opponent tired, Duran tied him up less and abandoned his tight-angled punches. He instead fought shoulder to shoulder, moving out to mid-range to throw more loaded strikes, before weaving back to safety on the inside. While Duran kept his head leaning heavily on his opponent's shoulder, he gave his hips much more space. This meant he was deceptively far away, and could easily move between mid and close range simply by moving his torso. It also meant he could generate a great deal of power by shifting his weight from his front foot to his back foot. Most of Duran's fights ended with him chasing after an already beaten and battered opponent. In part